Welcome to the Columbus podcast. We are here on a beautiful sunny day in the Columbus Oslo office, beautiful new office. And we are here to talk a little bit about the value opportunities that are coming up with the AI, and that in turn will lead to a discussion about how to actually succeed in transforming your organization and your business and what that really entails. How do we actually do that? So with me today, I have Dag Kallhovd from Columbus, and we also have Marianne Selle here from Microsoft. Very warm welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
And maybe I should introduce myself as well. My name is Henrik Leffler. I am a digital advisor in the strategy and growth department for Columbus in Sweden. Dag, what do you do in the day?
Well, I'm a solution director in Columbus. Heading a team of solution architects. So every day we are in the process of actually transforming old and obsolete legacy solutions into modern platforms like Dynamics 365. So and my situation has become a little bit now more on the warmer side now with AI, who is actually now giving us new incentives to create value instead of all the burning platform type of conversations that we used to have. So that's an interesting time that we are in now.
And we'll get into that in just a moment, right? But Marianne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Who are you?
I am, right now, I am the leader of customer success in Microsoft Norway. I have 25 years spent in consulting and as a delivery director. So delivering projects has kind of been my selling and delivering projects and seeing all the efforts to create value that have not really returned the value that the customer expected. They're normally happy, but that's because expectations are so low, I think. It's very often a huge divide between what somebody thought initially that they would get in return for a system and then what actually happens, because, and that's, we could discuss that for hours or weeks even, the distance between the ones mandating a project and the ones actually delivering or running it is actually too big. So that's also a point of value. But I think that it's made me quite passionate around using technology to create a real difference, because I'm convinced that technology brings difference to the organizations, and we've seen that a lot to the organizations that really take the technology and transform alongside the technology. It's unlimited almost what you can get out of it. But a lot of organizations choose not to do that, so that's why I'm loving my job.
Indeed, yeah. And it's also one of my favorite talking points to talk about the transformation tied to innovation, and what is innovation in terms of technology and platforms and ERP and so on. We can get back to that a little bit later, but just maybe one first question. With your long experience, do you feel that more projects are successful now than a few years ago? Is that something that the kind of cloud evergreen revolution is bringing with it?
Define success. Of course, what we see now with cloud is that when you buy software as a service, you don't run into the issues of we never managed to integrate our solutions, or we never managed to convert our databases, whatever. There's some technical aspects that are not as challenging anymore. It's less custom building, which is an advantage. I mean, you have software and also in AI. I mean, you have now finished algorithms. You don't spend a lot of time developing or thinking or designing solutions because they're there. So that's an aspect. I don't think that we have become better at getting the business involved in the IT discussions overall. I mean, some companies are great at it. But still we see that a lot of companies, they tend to outsource their thinking of a data project, which is still not a good idea.
Or that they are thinking that the project is external to the business.
Yes.
Even if it's the internal IT organization, or if you're trying to buy a consultancy company to go in and do it for you, that kind of transformation is something you do yourself, right?
Yeah, and I try to tell people that you cannot outsource your change. You cannot outsource your strategy. I mean, you can get help, but you cannot, as a leader, outsource the responsibility for actually owning your strategy or your change.
And just being able to push out optimism and energy and patience with the organization, with what you're trying to achieve, and to do that from the top level. That's one of my experiences, that you really need your top management to go out there and champion the transformation and to own it from the business.
I agree.
Right. So.
And also talking about this matter, it's also about the kind of compelling events. Why do you change at all? Because if you think about the first law of Newton, the law of motion, both objects and people and businesses don't want to change direction or their shape without any kind of forces being worked upon them. So in that sense, we are at least still we are in a kind of burning platform type of scenario where people are actually also questioning: do we have a burning platform at all, or what is the actually the compelling event that will mandate a change? So that is something that we have conversations every day with our customers about. What is really the incentive here? Yes, Marianne.
I think that's a super important point, because we also see customers moving to cloud, and we ask them, why do you want to move to cloud? And sometimes the answer is, isn't that what everybody's doing? And well, yes, a lot of, and you can move because of security, whatever. If you have a burning platform, it should also be looked upon as an opportunity for innovation. Because whatever you do, I mean, they say people don't change ERP systems more often than every 10 years. Some seems to, use 30 years before they actually consider changing them. And I think not just using the burning platform as a reason to do that change and just going into it with that mode is not giving yourself the fair advantage that you should be getting.
Yeah.
And it also does not really give you the energy to drive the change, the transformation on a lust base, so to speak, that you actually want to do it. It's more like, we are forced to do this. That doesn't really give any energy to transform the organization and so on.
No.
And also regarding the burning platform, I think we are actually in need of a new metaphor. And I think maybe the Leaning Tower of Pisa is something that is more adequate, because actually you would not really think about building something on top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It is in risk of toppling or crumbling as it is. And that's one of the things that we face every day, that you have a kind of technological legacy that can we really build upon this when we want to actually do innovation on it. And in most organizations, this is really not something that they feel it is safe actually to build upon this legacy solution.
And the thing is, you cannot see in IT, you cannot see that your house is missing walls. You could be completely missing just stories inside of your house, and you wouldn't even know, because it's not something physical you build, right?
Yeah, and also if you are a little bit afraid as well to be actually digging around the foundation of the Tower of Pisa. Will this actually crumble while I'm trying to explore the more constructional foundation of this building? So it is actually an obstacle for change as well, but it isn't really burning, because the burning platform kind of leans into, wow, I'm on an oil rig. It's burning. It's kind of, my business will really topple if I'm not jumping ship here. And this is not really what we are seeing. We are seeing something that is slowly leaning more and more. It will not take 400 years but 20 to 50 years is, I guess it's enough for such a structure to actually crumble.
And I
fall.
think you're being generous on time. I don't think
Yeah.
it's even 20 before. Again, the pace of change is happening more rapidly. And yes, your system.
At least if you want to build something on top of this, or you need to do it, then
Yeah, but most systems will maybe be able to exist for another 20 years. If you want to be competitive in our market, and that surprises me. Let's talk about innovation for 2 seconds, because it should be a driver. And I've been working really deliberately on innovation processes and how to actually drive innovation for several years. And it's a lot of things to innovation, but the biggest hurdle is that the knowledge of innovation is very low. People think it's still getting a good idea and then doing something fantastic. It's hard work. It's a way of working. It's about understanding how to test, how to experiment, how to actually build small parts and bigger parts. And I don't see a lot of companies taking that innovative approach when they are changing a system. But they should be. I mean, of course, it's a serious business to change a huge system. You need to be structured. You need to do all that stuff. But you also need to bring in that innovative mindset and challenge the business. I know what we get out of it now. What is possible? What could we dream about? What can we experiment with? How can we set up hypotheses? How can we develop our business on this as well? And that I think is a challenge that we probably as implementers of technology should be better at being vocal at. I mean, we can challenge the businesses that we're at. You have this Tower of Pisa leaning, and you have a bad platform. It's not falling, but it's crumbling. And we accept as consultants and implementers and product vendor to get in and just buy my license and buy my project and I'll finish it for you. I think we also have a responsibility, an increasing responsibility, to challenge our customers. How do we actually get you to where you want to be?
And here, Marianne, I'm really encouraged. More and more of our customers are actually asking, can you give me a proof of concept on this and that type of AI approach to see what kind of impact it could make on our business? So that's really something that we are working on today in Columbus. And we will get more and more of these requests as the AI will actually change all walks of life, including the ERP world. So that's
a really good point you're hitting on there, Dag. Yeah. I think that when we're talking about these things, what I find so fascinating is that the threshold of enabling new technology is really going really, really low. It's much easier now with low-code tools and with the kind of also easily enabled AI opportunities and so on, like Copilot, for example, just having it built in everywhere. It's not a technical question to use a new type of technology to enable a new way of working or a new business process or to clean up a business process or to make it efficient. And I think that's to come back a little bit to your point about innovation. I think one of the key things about innovation, and that's what the science about innovation tells us, is people need time to think to be innovative. So I think that's really hopeful for me if we can utilize all these modern, if we talk about the efficiency increasing AI tools to actually alleviate us as people so we have time to think. And so the combination of a little bit more time to think about what we're actually doing and why we're doing it, and then we have the reduction of the threshold of the technology. And we as IT professionals, we now have the opportunity to take the elevator up into the building and not be in the basement and configure things, but to really sit next to business and really work with them. Because that's also something I find really interesting when working a lot on some advanced AI projects in the past, that the knowledge of what you can actually do with this technology and the knowledge about where it can create value in the business is really far apart. So when you put that together with the modern tools that make that easy, that will enable a tremendous amount of value and also innovation. Because when you start that's kind of where transformation really happens in my experience, where people are kind of word of mouth seeing, oh, I could do this thing over here, and oh, this part of my work became easier, then that will spread. So if we get a foothold of that kind of innovative thing, it can broaden where we go in the organization.
Yeah, but I have actually a comment to that, because yes, the technology has become much easier, and there has been a huge gap or divide between those who understand the AI technology and those who actually know how to use it for a business advantage. The fact that it's become more easy does not cover that gap. So what we see is that we have the most interesting dialogues and that's what we are doing now, bringing architects much closer to the business faster. We're actually seeing, and that is probably what generative AI has, brought, is that business people are thinking more about AI opportunities, but still we see that when they talk to somebody who actually understands the AI better, they more easily now bridge that gap. But then dialogue needs to happen. So it's not, if you're in a business and you're thinking about using AI, bring in somebody who understands the technology still, but don't tell them what to do. Start discussing, having a dialogue.
Yeah, and also my experience is that customers are pretty level-headed and rational people, so they want cases where it is very likely that they will have a soon or a quick return on investment, and then they will start to explore scenarios where you can actually inject AI solutions into the business processes in a way that kind of leans towards the promise of hyper productivity in their processes. And we have some examples also in Columbus where we have done that, and using, for instance, the AI engine in Power Platform to transcribe or translate spelling errors and different formats, etc., and make this efficiently to a purchase order without intervention of human beings, which means that you can actually do this 24/7. And this is something that gives very quick payback on the investment here to actually inject an AI solution like that. And there are several kind of proof of concepts and types of AI infused business process that we are looking into these days. That's also one of the areas, for instance, in fraud detection and fraud prevention. We try to find out, using new tools, how to actually find out things that usually go under the radar, under approval limits, or some details within the invoice, etc., that is difficult to match, which this kind of tools would actually be able to solve in a powerful way. So these kind of challenges are typically things that we want to challenge our customers on in our engagements.
And I think it's still worth mentioning, if you can add many of those, small, fast examples that would actually return a significant amount of value. It also increases you're not out of the transformation woods. You're not transforming your business just because you are using. It's still as necessary to transform your organization. If you get those,
absolutely,
because then you have, in only 3 weeks, I will change this process fundamentally. That actually also requires even more from the organization in how will we work in 3 weeks. We had an example with a customer that was, starting using automation. It was not even AI, but really, really good automation. And in 3 months, they were able to actually reduce 10,000 hours of labor. That's the equivalent of like 6 people or something in 3 months. If you not as an organization is prepared, what do I do with those 6 people? Or the entire unit? So, and that is also a responsibility that we as vendors, we as product or technological pushers, we need to start talking about this as well. We need to address this in the organization, because if they don't have a plan for that, we need to make sure that they do. We need to make sure that the organizations understand the consequences, the glorious consequences of AI or becoming extremely much more efficient. And how do we take care of the people? How do we take care of the organization? How do we help you reskill? It's a lot of things that of course the organization needs to do, but I think also we and you, Columbus, as a consulting company, and you take responsibility for implementing these solutions.
Yep.
Really need to have a very strong focus on to be that modern advisor to any company.
Yeah. And also have as you say, a holistic view on this, because it's not really about just entering some new ingenious kind of capability into the solution mixer. It has a lot of impact on the organization as such, and you need to plan for it. You need to have a really good plan of change, how to actually handle this.
And I think that's also, I think why the kind of maturity of the implementing supporting organization, the way we are, impacts our clients, because we actually have methodology for change management, for transformation, for mapping these things out, for working with the client. And sometimes you almost need to joke that, all clients are the same. Oh, they never really know what their strategy is and so on. But that's just because when you come from outside, you can sometimes very more clearly than from the inside of the organization see where the organization is and what you're doing and what you're talking about. And as I like to say, the things that are most important to communicate are the ones that are so obvious that you don't even talk about them. And to kind of lift that up, especially when you're going into big transformation, especially if you haven't done a lot of transformations before, like if we are talking in the ERP domain, because that will typically be painful. If you've had your old ERP for a very long time, and you've streamlined your processes, maybe you're a distributing company or a manufacturing company, you're actually quite used to adapting to the status quo of what the processes look like. So it's a massive mindset change to actually be able to be adaptive. And it's also a massive mindset change, that's what we call business change, to actually enable decision making on a different level, because you were used to you would go to your vice president for every single decision because the process itself was so rigorously enforced. Whereas if you're going into a transformational program and you want speed in that, you need to be able to delegate that. And then you need to be very clear about the story of what is the vision we want to achieve? Where do we want to be as a company on the other end of this transformation? What does that mean from a people, process, data, system point of view? And then that's where all these, right, ADKAR and ProSci and all that comes in. It's a way, for me, it's a way to structure all these things. And there is a lot of wisdom in this type of methodology, but it doesn't really, you still need to do your work, right? The president of the company needs to go out and be there and say, this is going to be great, stick to it, we will make it so, this will be good. And also have, as you say, I mean, if it's a big change or a small change, to have a vision for where we're going to end up, what are we going to do with these people, how are we going to adapt as an organization, what challenges does it pose, and so on, and just have somebody to hold you. So what we're trying to do in these big changes is basically to hold the client's hand and say, oh yeah, but there is a method for that. We can map out these things in a structured way, make it more transparent, make it easier to communicate, but you still need to lead your train. And we can help you, but you need to lead your own train here. And I think that's also a really important difference between, installing a piece of software and transforming a business process.
Yeah, and that's the way, of course, ERP is not just a piece of software. It will actually have an impact on the entire organization. So it is, an ERP project is actually a transformation project in itself, with a lot of consequences for the organizations on all levels, which will not be less important when you infuse AI into this equation.
Yeah, and I am all for actually pushing some responsibility onto the Columbus kind of companies that are actually implementing, because to be fair, very few leaders in any organization have been through transformational projects because they happen so rarely. It's a seldom thing. They buy some strategy from a consulting company, which they never use, whatever. Normal organizations, even if we say that the world is changing all the time, for most people in most businesses, it doesn't change radically from year to year. And so we have to assume that as a company working with software that is changing all the time, we have a lot more contact with those consequences. We have a much better ability because we can compare. We can see what's going to happen. We have seen people being laid off. We have seen all this stuff. We have seen organizations laying off 20 people and then going out and hiring 18 new people. That might have been much cheaper to reskill the 18 that you just laid off. So we see all these consequences because we work in so many organizations. And I think, I come from a consulting background. I know that, when we got our project signed off, everybody was happy. We have our money. We pretend to be altruistic, but we also, and that's why I started with this customer success thing, also where I was before, that we need to start focusing on the outcome for the customer. And I think that also for companies like Columbus, I think that's a real success factor for you. And that's going to actually divide the good consulting companies or the good implementers from the bad ones, because the good ones, they care. The good ones actually bring those companies forward. And I think that's actually, it would require some boldness because we're not necessarily used to be invited into those discussions. I think that you should be extremely bold leaning into those discussions, because what you bring of your experience and the knowledge and other references and other customers and other organizations is actually a deep understanding of what an IT transformation is all about. As you say, you're transforming the entire business. It's not a project. It's a transformation, and it's not about IT. It's not about necessarily even just the finance department either. It's so many people that are, influenced by that change.
Yep.
So I think my challenge to you is just embrace it even more. And I think we would see a lot more value coming out of these projects if we were just bolder. And that's not, many companies, or C-level manager, they think that I have this software implementing company and I have my own consulting company giving me strategy. Those two need to merge. And I think that the ones that are actually understanding the consequences of the software implementations, like you, have a better chance of giving the right advice than those who are never really down into the complexity of a big IT project, because it is super complex.
Absolutely. And I think if we just turn the clock back a little bit, that's really the journey that we are on as a company also. The strategy and growth department that I work in was founded, I think, about around maybe 3 years ago today, where we really saw the need coming from extremely experienced solution architects, actually, who really said, we need a much clearer methodology and a much clearer way of working together to make sure that we get client success, that our clients are successful in their transformation projects. It's not implementation, it is actual transformation. So based out of that foundational insight, this is where we're really now, we have for the last few years added a lot of methodology and experts in this area. And I think it's really interesting to see when we work together as a whole, and especially the more we add, we also have full data scientist capabilities when it comes to data analytics, etc.
But I think you also have a challenge on that, and that's the perception of you as a company. Because what I find is that in a lot of organizations, there's quite much hierarchy and in the thinking of who is implementing an IT project and who is not involved, and HR is somewhere different, and the whatever business lines are elsewhere. So and it's not expected from a company like Columbus to come on and drive strategy. They would ask somebody else, and I think. But that divide between the strategy consultants and the implementation consultants is causing a lot of trouble. And I think your real talent is to actually be bold enough to kick in the door with the C-level people, also in the business lines, to be confident enough to say that actually the strategy advice that we will be giving is as good as any one of the strategy companies, which also is a competence challenge for many implementers, that they don't have those people. So I think if you can get that competence, and if you can use it boldly, and at the same time be able to have the communication line open between the strategy people and the implementers, because I have also seen companies who have both capabilities, but they don't talk to each other, so it doesn't help. You need to actually work cross-functional, diversely. It's different lines of thought. We need to acknowledge that as well. I mean, so we need to actually bridge the gap, and the ones who can make it, I'm sure will actually add tremendous value to the customers.
Personally, I think I think part of how we're addressing this journey is to kind of separate strategy from strategy. Because there's one strategy, which is where are we going as a company? And I don't think that is somewhere that we should position ourselves. I think our position is really to take that input and say, oh, this is where you want to go. Well, then you know what? We really need to take a sober look at where you are and what you are and the transformation you need to do to go from this business canvas to this business canvas, and to really to enable that, and then also add to that the understanding of the full stack of what it means to implement it from a technical point of view, because that's when you really can tie the technology back to the direction the company is going.
I think that's a perfect point. It's super important. It's actually, and that's where actually in most companies there is nothing today. They have this, where do we want to go? They don't have the how do we implement this strategy with the people, the competence, the organization, and the systems that we have. So I think it's an excellent point.
I have realized in some assignments I've done in the last year, where if you are the consulting company that gives the strategic roadmap advice, let's say, where you actually recommend solutions and you recommend systems, and then you go about implementing it, and then you're going about taking care of the operations for those systems, you cannot throw it over the fence and say, oh, my advice was great. This is a really good strategy. You just failed in implementing it, or you're consulting him, because that would be us from beginning to end. And it's a really interesting task, and it's a really interesting responsibility to really and that's what we want to do. That's where we want to be, to really take that responsibility and say, yes, but we are kind of guaranteeing, we are helping you to elaborate this strategy and this roadmap, because we believe it will be feasible to execute. It will be possible to realize the value that we are mapping now with you in the first meeting. We know how to get to the end point, or at least we've, as you say, I mean, this is what we do all the time, and we have specialists who, like us, who do different aspects of this, and who are really, we have the opportunity to be really truly aligned, even though we have adjacent specialities, and I think that becomes really, really strong when you're trying to do this kind of implementation, that you actually, as you say, you actually have the same partner doing both ends of that strategy and implementation, and takes the full responsibility for it.
And what you are saying now, Henrik, is also bringing another point into the conversation, and that is methods and agility. In the ERP world, at least, we came from a kind of waterfall type of projects where this doesn't really work. I don't know whether it worked well in the past either, but at least it is not working well now. We need some kind of approach that we don't really know in detail all the capabilities that we are actually in need of. And we need some kind of agreement and a project plan that is aligned with the capabilities we need. We need some kind of change management on top of that to actually implement all the capabilities we need. And on top of that, again, you have some expectations from the wider audience or the customer and the users that are not really well articulated. And hence the leaning tower of Pisa again, that you need to align this in a kind of, we usually call it a minimum viable product type of approach that this is actually the minimum, and then we will explore the solution and implement it from that point on, which means that you can actually implement something quite faster than we used to do, and also to then enrich the solution as we go along and get more thorough understanding of what we're actually in need of in the projects. So this kind of hybrid agile type of methodology is what we are seeing now more and more in the market, and what we are also embracing ourselves in our own projects.
And I think that's maybe one of the challenges that we should leave also out of, get people to take out of this conversation is, if you are an organization thinking about changing your CRM system or your ERP system, whatever, as you say, that the old waterfall methods, they never worked. They may have worked in a silo environment. When I started programming as a young person, we had client server technology. You had a very controlled environment. Then you could define the number of servers, the number of database tables, whatever. You did everything. That was kind of controlled, but it's many years since the complexity was just surpassing that. And it doesn't. Waterfall is not a good idea. It never has been. So when we started experimenting with Agile, we made a lot of mistakes in that too. But the mindset that any business needs to have is Agile, and going along and trying to, hiring, and that's one of the things I really, really think we should get rid of is, hiring somebody to make a requirement specification and then starting to hire somebody else to implement it. I mean, never do that. Never do that again, because it's not working. You need to understand what you want to get out of the system, and then you need to hire somebody who can actually help you along that road. But you can save all that money for the requirement specification. You can make that as slim as possible. You need to find a partner that you trust, that can in an agile fashion take you along that path.
We don't define the rules of the game here, Marianne, but we try.
No. But I'm really thinking that is a path that any organization should take, and we've seen some good examples of it, and we hopefully see more of it. I still see that some, come out with these large requirement specifications, and it just sets the entire transformation on a minus instead of starting, and then you already spent a lot of money getting on that minus stage, instead of taking that approach of collaboration and exploring the technology and the organization and the progress together. And I just think that's also something we just need to advocate again and again and again. We need to get out of that old-fashioned requirement specification kind of mode and into the transformation mode. But that is a partnership, and it's possible, I think, also for public tenders to get into that, because you can choose a partner as well. You just need to change the criteria.
Absolutely.
And talk more about the output. So you have more of an output-based model for how you want to do it, and aligning with the value you want to create with the platform. And as I said before, the full circle around, it's not a system question. It's a transformational system, as you say. I mean, when we say transformation, obviously we mean the full package of people and information and data and systems and all of these things. So I will agree with you there that it's really interesting to think about how to explore this, because some of these processes will be explorative. You don't actually know what they're going to look like in the end, and in some areas you actually do know what they're going to look like, because they may not be that important to you. And I think this is a really important point that I try to bring in clients, to talk about prioritizations in terms of differentiating capabilities. Where And I think this is really good homework for any manager in any company, right? Think about where you differentiate yourself from your competitors, and what does that mean from a transformational point of view in terms of processes and systems and data? Can you do something better if you have better transparency of how your business works? Is there some specific capability that really enables value and growth? Then think, especially if you're going into these platforms that we're now seeing, like the SaaS ERP platforms, where you can actually say, oh, this stuff, that's fine. Just try to keep it as standardized as possible. Just try to follow along on the development path that Microsoft as a provider is on to make this better by themselves. But my company perhaps does not make more profits by being better at paying salaries. I just want to do the bog standard way of doing that. But there is some other aspect where we really need to focus. And I think that's really important, not only to focus the resources, but also the time in the organization. You don't spend time administering, you don't have meetings all the time about things that just don't matter. I think that's also a really important part of, well, I guess business change, as we talk about it, to say, okay, so how do you actually create a concise environment of how to take decisions and where to spend your time, and be conscious of that. And I think that's also coming back to the generative AI discussion around efficiency. This is an area where we can actually pick up energy and pace and move it to somewhere consciously where it actually matters. And I find that to be a really interesting kind of homework, something to think about. Instead of thinking about, things gone wrong and your problems and so on, think about, what do we do well? Why do people give us money? And let's focus on making that even better.
Agree.
Could be a good advice, yes.
And that is also, about, it's about focus. It's about picking your battles. It's about also being able to focus on, if you don't find that, what do we do really well? Or, it helps you focus on, just by asking that question, where should we improve? What should be our competitive edge? What is possible? And I was thinking when you mentioned this, Copilot, whatever, the word coming to mind is empowerment, but enthusiastically funded empowerment. So you need the enthusiasm and the drive from the top. That does not mean that you need the directions. So and I think that's also in this AI world, and where things have become easier to do. So you need to both have a clear vision, and as a top management, you need to drive that, communicate it, support it, and then you also need to get rid of the temptation to direct how this is going to be looking like, because in an agile world, we don't succeed without everybody starting to explore, how can I be more efficient, as you say. So any manager, even a normal person who could get this hands on their tools, would come with ideas or be able to bring improvement. And if you have an organization that does not encourage that behavior, you're also missing out. But both is needed. And you need the empowerment and you need the direction.
To summarize a little bit today's conversation, we touched upon how AI and the new productivity tools can release energy into the organization to enable things, and to also perhaps spark some creativity for the next phase of what you want to achieve. Secondly, we also talked quite a bit, I think, about the importance of top management to participate and bring energy and optimism and faith in the process of transformation. And to also add to that the right type of methodology, and of course the right type of partner who can help you throughout the journey and take that responsibility. And to also always focus on the value you're going to create in your transformation, rather than the perhaps technical or organizational changes that are going to happen, which are a result of the desire to create the change, the value in that change. Should we take that as a little bit of a closing note? And I hope that you as a listener found this discussion very interesting. And thank you very much from us at Columbus. And thank you, Marianne, for joining us today. Thank you, Dag.
Pleasure.
And see you next time on the Columbus podcast.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.